You know, there's another thing that I've been focused on, I should say focused on, but it's been sticking in my craw since we found out about it 13 years ago. I've been at Judicial Watch 21 years, believe it or not. So I've seen a lot of corruption in government. And during the President Bush administration in 2005, the Federal Reserve set up a program called Directo on Mexico, and it was run out of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve essentially, I don't want to speak beyond my ken on this, but the Federal Reserve is divided up, comprised of Federal Reserve banks regionally, and there's a bank, Federal Reserve Bank based in Atlanta, the regional bank there. So Directo on Mexico was set up by the Federal Reserve Bank of Mexico, not of Mexico, of the United States. That's a Freudian slip. And it's designed to compete, and it was designed to compete with private money transfer companies like Wells Fargo and things like that. And the problem with those private transfer companies, and as you might imagine, the remittances issue generally is, forget about illegal aliens illegally working and then sending the proceeds of their ill-gotten gains back home. Drug dealers were using this to convey monies from the drug profits back to the cartels in Mexico. So, of course, our government wanted a piece of the action because they were saying in theory that it was too much money to ask these immigrants to pay through the private sector. So they were using the Federal Reserve that is funded with tax dollars, both directly and indirectly, to subsidize this massive transfer of wealth, mostly by illegal aliens, back home to Mexico. How massive is it? Well, it's been going on now for 13 years. We began the investigation in 2005, and we've begun monitoring it ever since. $33.48 billion in remittances were sent out of the country last year. And a big chunk of it flowed through this Federal Reserve program. So the U.S. government is largely responsible for the billions of dollars flowing south of the border from illegal aliens. There were 104 million transactions executed in 2018 alone, and that's figures from the Mexicans. Again, it was set up by George Bush under the U.S.-Mexico Partnership for Prosperity. In his first year, it was $20 billion, and now, as I say, it's just increasing every year. It's up near well over 30. And this is a way for illegal aliens, again, to send their ill-gotten cash back home. And why is it ill-gotten cash? Because they're not allowed to work here. And if they are working, they're usually doing it in a fraudulent way, using either someone else's ID or not paying appropriate taxes on it, all sorts of illegal activity associated with illegal work here. And some of the cash they're getting is for outright illegal activity. How do you think MS-13 gets its money? How do you think the drug cartels get all their money? Do you think it just flows across the border in trucks? Of course not. They use the banking system. Now, President Trump ran against this type of thing, but I have a feeling he doesn't know about this. I really don't, because I'm sure he'd be outraged. Because he proposed a plan to get Mexico to fund the border wall by cutting off the remittance payments to Mexico. It's not Wells Fargo, it's Western Union that does the transfer payments. I'm sure Wells Fargo does too, but it's Western Union that's famous for money transfers. So Trump's campaign had focused on cutting off, the transfer payments out of Western Union, but they didn't mention the Federal Reserve Program. Now, what can be done to stop the bad things from happening here? In the least, they can require proof of citizenship or legal residence in order to use the program. But that's not what the Federal Reserve wants to do. In fact, they specifically market to illegal aliens. And I highlight the fact that we don't ask any questions about your legal status in order for you to use this system. So we have a border crisis, and I keep on telling you that the border crisis is so it is made worse by the federal government in so many ways This crisis has 1,000 fathers, as the phrase goes. And the crisis is getting worse and worse and worse. And you can see what the incentives are. You get here, you get benefits, you are allowed to remain if you're in a sanctuary city without fear of being deported or being turned in. You can work, people will look the other way, and if you get cash while you're here that you're not supposed to have, you can get it out of the country with the help of the federal government, the Federal Reserve specifically. The numbers this past month are 92,000, I think, were picked up at the border. Our border is out of control. We've lost control of the border, everyone. We've got this Federal Reserve system encouraging illegal activity here in the United States. We have federal court judges. We had a federal court judge just the last week make a ruling that aliens from a country other than Mexico who are having to wait in Mexico to have their asylum claims here in the United States, which I guarantee you are fraudulent, adjudicated, can't be made to wait in Mexico. We have one U.S. District Court judge in Northern California make that ruling. So the judges are causing this crisis by tearing down the rule of law at the border. The president just fired the head of DHS, Secretary Nielsen. She certainly wasn't solving the problem. The president recognizes there's a serious problem on the border, that there's a crisis, and he's thinking of various ways to do it. And he's recognizing that personnel in the DHS aren't doing it. And what's he going to do now? I don't know. He's talking about moving more troops to the border. He's talking, I don't think he's joking. He wants to actually, rather than just let these illegal aliens go anywhere they want in the country, place them specifically in cities that are thwarting federal law with sanctuary policies. Of course, the left is going crazy there, which I don't understand why, because they like open borders and like illegal aliens. Why wouldn't they want them present in their homes or their hometowns? Every major city in the country, I'm confident in saying, is a sanctuary city. And when you have sanctuary cities, it just encourages more people to come up here illegally. I've recommended that the DHS can't be relied upon to secure the border anymore. We have to have the military secure the border. And if the courts are going to be insistent, and I don't think that insistence should be followed, then we should move our troops into Mexico to interdict caravans before they get here, so that no one can enter the border illegally, or using this asylum abuse to do so. The president can shut down the border. He can stop immigration all across the board with Mexico. He can say no one can get through. He's got to take these steps, I think, consider the strongest possible steps available to him under the law and the Constitution to protect this nation. And the states have independent opportunities under our Constitution to protect themselves in cases of invasion where the federal government refuses to act. And so if you live in a state that's hurt by this, you should be asking your elected officials, what are they doing to repel this invasion? Our republic is at stake, folks. This isn't a fight over what's the tax rate should be. This is a fight whether we're going to be a sovereign country or not. And Judicial Watch is doing its part by suing to find out what's happening, suing sanctuary cities like in San Francisco. Doing our Freedom of Information Act requests to expose the truth about the illegal alien crisis. Working on election integrity measures that protect us from having aliens, both lawfully and unlawfully present, voting illegally in our elections. We're fighting the battle on multiple fronts. I'm glad President Trump is thinking seriously about this, because at times it seems like he's the only politician doing so. And I just call you to take active action as well. Support Judicial Watch, obviously, but call your elected officials and tell them to get on the ball to deal with this threat to our republic. So that's your job for the next week. Figure out who you need to call and call them.